Welcome to the arsenal of Mega Man 3. The Buster is pretty much unchanged from 2, so I won't be spending much time on that. But I did want to make one note before we go to a power that's just like the Buster. See, the Mecha Caros here are too low to be hit with the Buster, but with the Needle Cannon you can hit them because it fires low and high in alternating fashion. Other than that though, the Needle Cannon is almost exactly like the Buster. It does pretty much the same damage to everything except a couple of bosses. One other advantage is that you can hold it down for rapid fire even if you don't have an auto-fire controller. So with that, it has some advantages and its disadvantages being that it can't do anything the Buster can't, and it has a limited ammo. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Okay, so next we have the Magnet Missile. It can travel in right angles to hit enemies, and it takes 2 units of energy per shot, but it has quite a bit of power behind it, and its ability to aim in those right angles is useful. Now it for some reason can't home in on every enemy, like as you can see it misses those grenade type enemies, but it still can hit them. This is also true of the large snakes in Snake Man's level. Also, you can see its ammo becomes a problem because I can scarcely get out of that room with all of mine intact. And the Mecha Caros show you another weakness of it, and that is that the homing device is not perfect. If you're far enough away from an enemy, and if you don't shoot it just right, it can miss, just like that. But it is useful in sections like this, where you have to make precarious jumps with enemies coming down. So I'm going to give it a pretty generous 7 out of 10. You just have to conserve its ammo. So we are to the Gemini Laser. For it to be most effective, you have to find enemies that it is useful against, like these Needle Harrys. It's got a pretty unforgiving hitbox, and you can bounce it against walls to make it, ricochet around everywhere. It will do that for a long time until finally going off screen, and you can only have one on screen at once. Sometimes it splits like that. If you could make it split, maybe it would be a little better. But it has the same ammo problem, namely 2 per shot, as the Magnet Missile. So unless you're getting drops per every few enemies you hit, it's not going to be very useful. That, and unless you're a pool expert, the ricocheting isn't going to be very helpful. So with that, I'll give it about a 3, I suppose. The Hard Knuckle is a rocket punch with a bit of an aiming ability to it. You can make it sway up and down a little bit. It takes 2 energy per shot. It seems to be a trend in this game. But it also pauses you while you shoot it, so you can use it to sort of delay a jump a bit. This isn't useful all the time, but sometimes it is. You have to be careful using the Hard Knuckle against enemies that are partially invincible. You might want to get in close before using it, unless you have really good timing, which I don't always. So, as you can see, it is quite powerful. In fact, these mini-boss type things, one hit. It also can destroy some weird colored barriers in a Wily stage or two. So, with that, despite its slow and unwieldy nature, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Here we've come to the most misunderstood of weapons in Mega Man 3, is the top spin. You can only use it while jumping, and one of its main problems is you have to know exactly which enemies it works against, because if not, it does nothing. And worse yet, if you try to use it while you're flashing on an enemy that it does nothing to, it drains completely. But allow me to show you some of the enemies it does work on. Mets. Needle Harrys. These extremely irritating monkey things. Highly recommended. Everything you see in this room. Yanbos. Hammer Joe's hammers, but not them themselves. Mecha Caros. And even these parachute things, but that's its displacement effect makes it not recommended. All that and more, plus Shadow Man and the last form of the final boss. So top spin isn't as bad as people think it is, but against those things that it does fail against, it fails hard. So I would say about a 5. The Search Snake is from Snake Man, obviously. It reminds me of the Bubble Lead, except it has about the power of the Buster, and it moves along terrain. You can see it's pretty useful for this room. When the hologram enemies make it dim, the Search Snake still maps out the terrain and helps you find your way. It kind of has a novelty value there. Plus, it can be helpful in certain strategic areas. Like, I can think of a few places you can use it in Top Man's level and Magnet Man's. But besides that, it doesn't have any very outstanding features. So, in addition to being able to climb on walls and such, it can take out these mecha heroes, which hide on the floor, if you can hit them right. I'd give it about a 5 out of 10. It's basically the Buster, but with a different aiming philosophy. So, the Spark Shock, huh? You can have 2 on screen per once. It freezes enemies in place, but once you've frozen an enemy, you can't do anything. You can't pause it, to switch to another weapon, and beyond that, it doesn't even work on a lot of people. Once you do freeze something, like I said, you can do nothing, and the enemy still has its hitbox. The Spark Shock also has some use against enemies with a limited spawn. You can stop the ones that do exist, and then no more will come to bother you. And to find out in the revisit stages what dock robots it works well on, just think of the Pokemon weaknesses. Electric beats flying and water, so it works actually best against Airman and Bubbleman. That's kind of strange. But since you won't get very much use out of this thing at all, I'm going to have to go ahead and give it a 1 out of 10. It's definitely a clunker, and even worse than the Ice Slasher. In today's gaming terminology, the Shadow Blade is what we would call a nerf. You can only have 1 on screen per once. You can shoot it in one of 5 directions, none of the downward directions. And as you can see, it has a limited range, and it comes back to where you threw it and not back to you. But barring that, it still has some use. You get 2 to a bar, I believe, yeah, looks like it. And it can be used on a lot of enemies. It has about the power of 2 Buster shots or more, depending on who you use it on. And if your aim is good, you can come to rely on it a fair bit. So, and as you can see, it has some good terrain advantages at some points. So it is better than the Buster in some areas, such as aim and power. For that, I'm going to give it about a 6 out of 10. It does have some awkwardness to it, but it's not too bad. You can use it in a lot of situations. So to give your utilities a little more personality, they now come in the form of a dog called Rush. Now, in this form, he is a springboard, and he can help you in certain areas where he's designed to be used in, like this one in Hardman, and there's an area in Gemini Man where you need to use one of Rush's 3 forms. He tries to beam next to you, but he goes into the next available ground. You can use him to climb up ladders a bit easier, and if you try to summon him into a wall, he'll go where you are and beam back up, so that's not very helpful, but anyway. So he has a bit of utility, but to me he's a pretty much middle of the road helper, in this form at least. So that's about, I don't know, a 5. You don't see the Rush Marine around anymore, for good reason. It's completely eclipsed by the next utility we're going to examine. You can still shoot, it drains energy constantly, and you can breach the water and sort of hop around. But given its extreme limit of usefulness, I'll give it about a 2 out of 10. In Mega Man 3 at least, the Rush Jet, or RJ as I call it affectionately, is basically cheating. You can use it to move around anywhere, and it uses energy as long as you're on its back. So what do, you can hop everywhere, and it will lower its energy consumption. And you can still have 2 pellets on screen at once. So there's pretty much no utilities in the Mega Man series as broken as Mega Man 3's Rush Jet. So for that, I have to give him a 10 out of 10. So see you guys next time when we'll examine Mega Man 4.